English word that means holy day. And I just thought that was really cool when we seem to be in a country right now that seems to want to take Christ out of everything by calling it a holiday. So we can all go around and laugh and know they're calling it a holy day. So it's really cool. So anyway, now we'll be back on track. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what thankfulness is. Webster defines thankfulness as warm, friendly feelings of gratitude or appreciativeness or gratefulness. Sorry, you can't see that very good. So basically, thankfulness is good manners. I know as a parent, you work really hard to teach your kids to say please and thank you, even to say thank you in those times when they don't want to. And I can think of many occasions where my children received gifts where they either already had it or they didn't like it, and they make that face, and inside as a parent you're going, oh my gosh, please say thank you. When I was writing this, I instantly went to A Christmas Story where he put on the bunny outfit and the sweater, and his mom is, come on, it's cute, you like it, and she's trying to encourage him. And when I was writing this, that's right where my brain went. I was going to show that, but I decided against it. So anyway, so thankfulness basically is a decision, and it's a decision before it's a discipline, and it's an action before it's an attitude. So we grow learning how to be thankful. The Bible gives us lots of examples of gratitude or thankfulness. In fact, it's mentioned many times. In King James Version, it's mentioned 30 times. In the NIV version, it's mentioned 32 times. In New English Translation, 29. English Standard, 38. And the New Living Translation, it's mentioned 31 times. Now, that's the word thankfulness or thankful or gratitude. There are examples of these things in the Bible many more times, but it's just not using those words. These are using those exact words. So in life, I think we find it easy to give thanks when our prayers are answered. Too often we wait until we get the answers we want before we're thankful to God. However, the Bible shows us many examples of people that cried out to God before they received what they were praying for in thanks. We can think of Daniel and Moses, Joseph and Sarah, King David. And there was one person in particular, and I found an account that was written by Billy Graham, and I thought it was really awesome. It says, the next footsteps in the corridor he knew might be those of the guards taking him away to his execution. His only bed was the hard stone cold floor of the dank, cramped prison cell. Not an hour passed when he was free from constant irritation of the chains and the pain of the iron manacles cutting into his wrists and his legs. Separated from friends, unjustly accused, brutally treated, if ever a person had the right to complain, it was this man. Languishing and forgotten in a harsh Roman prison, but instead of complaints, his lips rang with the words of praise and thanksgiving. The Apostle Paul was a man who learned the meaning of true thanksgiving. Even in the midst of great adversity, earlier when he had been imprisoned in Rome, he wrote, sing and make music in your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks to the Father for everything in the name of your Lord Jesus Christ. That was in Ephesians 5:19 through 20. So think of it. Think for a minute. Always giving thanks in everything, no matter your circumstances. Thanksgiving for the Apostle Paul was not a once-a-year celebration. It was a daily reality for him. He gave thanks in everything. He was joyful in every situation. Thanksgiving, the giving of thanks to God for all blessings, should be a distinct mark of a Jesus follower or a Jesus believer. We must not allow the spirit of ingratitude to harden our hearts or chill our relationships with God or others, because it has a tendency to do that. Nothing turns us into bitter, selfish, dissatisfied people more quickly than having an ungrateful heart. And nothing will do more to restore contentment and the joy of our salvation than that spirit of thankfulness. So, some of you are probably thinking, okay, Kacy, that's good, that's easy enough said, but you don't have any idea what I'm going through. How could I possibly find thankfulness in this? Well, I'm going to share with you my past year, and I want to start by saying, first of all, every person I'm about to talk about, I have their permission to talk about. Some of these things I did not wear on my sleeve. Some things people in the room did know some of it, but not all of it. And I want to just share with you this year I've had. So a year ago in August, we came back from an amazing trip to St. Kitts. It was fabulous. We had a great time. We were hot, but it was awesome. And we had an amazing time loving on the kids there. Joshua, our youngest son, who plays football and hopes to go to college to play football, came home a day earlier than the rest of us because his football practice was starting. The day we came home, we got home about 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'll be honest, this mom was sleeping. That day, Josh went to school to practice with some of his friends because the tryouts were the next day. Well, while he was at these tryouts, he was going to receive a catch, which that's not even the position he plays, I might just add, but anyway. and he came down wrong on his foot. Um, Unfortunately, the trainer was, well, it doesn't matter. It was fortunate, but the trainer saw it and told him he had to go to the doctor. Well, my child and his priorities went to the buffet first and then came home to me, and it was like 12 noon, and I'll be honest, I was still sleeping because we got home at 3 o'clock in the morning from a 2-week trip to St. Kitts. And he's standing at the edge of my bed, and he goes, Mom, I think I hurt my foot. He goes, I don't think it's a big deal, though, but we need to go to patient first to get an x-ray. So we get up and we go to patient first, and the doctor, they take us right back. They do an x-ray first for the first time. I've never been there where they take you for the x-ray, then take you to the room, but that's what they did this time. And the doctor comes in and says, okay, Josh, so tell me what happened. And he goes, it wasn't a big deal. He goes, I just jumped up and came down wrong on my foot. He said, I think it's just a bruise. Well, the doctor said, well, Josh, he's like, you've broken your foot. And he goes, and it's pretty bad. It's something called a Jones fracture. And he goes, your season's over. So to a boy who wants to go to college to play football, and this is his junior year, Joshua went from, oh, it's not a big deal, to, are you kidding me? Why now? So I had our orthopedist on the phone. He was in surgery 2 days later. And by having the surgery, the doctor said he could return in 4 weeks. So Josh returned to play in October. So now this brings us to October. So this year, every year, all 3 of our boys have played football at the same school. We participate in all the homecoming festivities. Well, this is homecoming day. Dana and I were at our pancake breakfast. We had been there. We had to be there at 5:30 in the morning to cook pancakes for 900 people. And while we were there, I was checking everybody in. I got a phone call from St. Agnes Hospital. And it was, Mrs. Leach, we need you to come now. Your son attempted suicide. So to have that phone call, and that's all they said. No more, no less, no what condition he was in, not how he attempted to, not what we were going to find when we got there. So needless to say, the world shut down quickly for Dana and I. I will be honest with you. Driving to St. Agnes Hospital from my house, it's not that far. That was the longest drive of my life. In that time, I have never cried harder than I have cried in my life on that drive to St. Agnes Hospital. Right before we pulled into the hospital, I got a text from my son, Brandon, and he said, Mom, I'm sorry, I love you. So at least God gave me a glimmer of he's still here. He's still okay, and he's still all right. Dana and I walked into the hospital to be stripped of everything we had, to go into a room that was stripped of everything in it, to a stranger sitting at the end of the bed staring at my son, who had attempted suicide. He had attempted suicide because of a point of being depressed, emotions over a relationship, lots of things in life. But Dana and I hit a spot in our life where we raised our kids in the church. They knew who Jesus was. Suicide was never, ever, ever in our radar, ever. We were floored. I was floored. I hit an all-time low in my life from that point that I felt like I was a head walking around with no body for weeks. And then I discovered that I had depression from this event that I had a hard time pulling myself out of. After that, in January, fast forward, Brandon went through therapy, lots of therapy. We did family therapy, individual therapy, and we thank the Lord that he was transferred to a Christian-based hospital, which was amazing, that we could sit and talk openly about our faith. They encouraged him to talk about his faith. It was a blessing in that. But then January comes around, and we got another phone call. This time it was from the trauma center. Mrs. Leach, come. Your son's been in an accident. You need to come now. No more information. Just come now. So again, Dana and I pack up in the car, and for time 2, driving to a different hospital, to a trauma center, not knowing what we're going to find. Brandon, again, was in a car with a drunk driver that decided to wrap the car around a pole, and Brandon took the brunt of the injury. Brandon had a broken arm, a broken leg, and broken bones all over his face. The driver, as in most situations, was not hurt at all. Brandon was now in a different position where months before he tried to take his own life, now someone tried to take his. Brandon was very, very hurt. He fractured all the bones in his sinus cavity. He broke the orbital. He had air in his head from the fracture in his face. It was rough. He had to have surgeries. To walk into a room and find your son on a bed with his clothes filleted and blood everywhere, it is something that I will never lose from my brain ever again. So Brandon was in the hospital for a week. Thank the Lord he came home. Still rough and tough, and he looked like he'd been in a prize fight and lost because he had black eyes, bruised face. He was so swollen, it was crazy. A lot of people here came to visit him, and it was just mind blowing the amount of damage he had done. The day he came home, Brandon was home, and I don't remember where we were, but I think about it, and we get this phone call, and he is sobbing, 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 sobbing. And Brandon went away to college for a year in Oklahoma, to a Nazarene college called Southern Nazarene University. He was there for 2 years, and while he was there, he made some amazing friends. He had a family, a mom. Her name is Corey, and her family was like his Oklahoma mom. And Brandon came home because he had a little too much fun at school, and it's a little too expensive to have fun and not do your schoolwork. So Brandon came home. But on this day he came home from the hospital and was discharged, he got a call from Corey, or from his friends. His friend Cammie, who is one of his best friends from the 2 years he was there, one of the people he returned to Oklahoma to be in her wedding, was killed tragically hiking in the desert of Arizona. She was hit by a stray bullet into her heart and killed her instantly. So Brandon was taking hit after hit after hit. Now, while this is Brandon's struggles, this was Dana's and my struggles too. We as parents, every time he took a hit, we took the hit with him. We had the fear of a child who had once tried to attempt suicide, is now taking hit after hit. Would he do it again? You're like a hawk and you watch him because you're afraid, is this going to be the thing that's going to send him over the edge again? So when he got this call, it devastated him. It floored him. And the first thing he said is, Mom, I'm going to Oklahoma. Well, Brandon, you just came out of the hospital. Your face is broken. You have a broken arm and broken bones and stitches everywhere. I really don't think the doctors are going to allow you to fly. Well, of course, they at first did not. Because of the situation and the way she was killed, it was an investigation. That time of that investigation gave him time to heal, where he was then allowed to go to Oklahoma. Now, I'm jumping ahead, but that saved my son's life, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So January, Brandon had this. In March, my son Christopher comes home for a job interview. And when he came home, Brandon got the idea, I'm moving to Oklahoma. So in 1 week's time, Brandon moved to Oklahoma. As a parent, I will tell you, I'm not sure how Dana completely felt, but in this time, I felt like, oh my gosh, he's going to be 24 hours away and I can't watch him. I can't make sure my son does not try to kill himself again. I can't make sure my son doesn't make a dumb decision and do something that's going to hurt him worse. So I, in a week's time, had to come to terms with my son is moving to another state because he's an adult and he can. So then we come to March. And you think, oh, that's enough for this family. Well, in March, my husband was injured at work. A lot of you know, you remember him hobbling around. He blew up his quadricep at work. We have a neighbor who had the same injury. And one of the things, you know those things people say to you, you don't ever forget? He came up and he goes, this is going to be a strain on your marriage. This is going to be one of the hardest things you ever go through. So, Dana had surgery. Anyway, so Dana had surgery. The injury was a little worse than they anticipated once they got him open. He ended up being in the hospital for 2 days, came home on a pain pump. So on the Friday, Dana's pain pump ran out of medication. And this was the first night Dana had allowed me, I was sleeping in the living room with him, and he said, go sleep upstairs tonight, because it's not comfortable sleeping on couches. And I had just gone upstairs to go to sleep, had fallen asleep, and the pain pump wore off. That night was a night of hell, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I adore that man, and I have never been in a position in my life to see someone in so much pain and be able to do absolutely nothing. In the end, this was like 11:30, he called me back downstairs. He finally fell asleep at 6 in the morning, where we could get back on top of the pain again. The only thing I could do was lay my hands on his head and pray, because I didn't have any other options. I had nothing else to do. But where this neighbor said, this is going to strain your marriage, the injury brought our marriage together closer, because we realized how much we love each other and how much we're willing to do for each other. We are still dealing with that injury today. Dana did not go back to work till this summer from that injury. He still has therapy 2 days a week. Every day he comes home from therapy, he's exhausted because they're working him hard. He still can't walk without buckling. It's the scariest thing to see if you're standing behind him and his leg buckles. So we're still healing from that. And then we come to September. And most of you remember I went to a football game and I thought I had a stomach flu. I left the football game with vomiting and diarrhea. Thought I was like had appendicitis or something. Gave it 4 days to see if it was a stomach flu. I had acute pain on my left side, and I wasn't getting better, so I went to the doctor. They thought I had diverticulitis, and they had sent me for lab work. And the next day, I was supposed to go for a CAT scan. I had lab work, and the next morning, I get a call. You need to go to the ER now. And I'm like, why? What's going on? And they're like, your lab work is awful. You need to go to the ER now. So they sent me to the ER. I had to wait for Dana to come home. We went. I somehow bypassed everything and went straight to the back. And you know that's not good. When they tell you don't go to Howard County because there's a 12-hour wait and there's only a 4-hour wait at St. Agnes, so go there. Well, somehow I bypassed everything and went straight to the back. Long story short, I had a kidney infection for apparently months and a kidney stone. And the kidney stone had either gotten stuck in my ureter or something, but it ruptured my ureter on the left side. This releasing toxins through my body, so I had systemic infections in my body that was making me sick. I was in the hospital for a week. I've never told people this. People came to visit me. I don't remember anybody visiting me. I had to check with my husband and like, did Sally come see me at the hospital? I think they did. I think I remember Mark and Jenny. I don't remember what we talked about. I was sick. I have never been so sick in my life. The worst part is I came home in a week and they sent me home because I was catching other things in the hospital because my immunity was so shot. Well, all of you know I have my skin condition. The basis of those issues came to be my skin medication that I have to take because I have lost fingers before taking it. And that's the only thing that stops me from losing my fingers. But everything, every doctor from it and every specialist kept saying is stop taking your medicine. I tried, it was 2 months, and last week I had to start taking it again because my fingers started hurting again. The same pain that I had before, years ago, came back. And that's one of the things I expressed to my husband the one day is I said, I was very depressed and crying, and I said, I guess I'm disappointed because it's been all these years of no pain like I used to have in my fingers. And just in the matter of 2 months, the pain came back again. I guess a little glimmer of me was hoping it was gone forever. So, this is a season of my life, just one. I've had many like this, unfortunately. We could go into the whole 13-year journey of my hand issues, but we won't. So why am I telling you this? So you'll feel sorry for me? No, not at all. I'm telling you this so that I can tell you that I'm thankful that Jesus is by my side through all of it, and God has made me stronger and has taught me about his will for my life, and that God has used every single one of these situations to mold me into the person he's changing me to be in him. My ultimate goal is to become more and more like Jesus. And one day, I will have the ultimate reward, which is eternity with him. So this is what I'm not saying in this, though. I'm not saying that each situation ended perfectly, and I'm thankful. Because these situations, some of these situations haven't ended yet. I can tell you that Brandon, though, now is in Oklahoma and doing amazing. I'm going to start crying. He's doing fabulous. He's got a job. He's living on his own, paying his own bills, and he's happy. He has a new girlfriend. And when your son calls you up and says, Mom, you'd like her. Instead of before that, I didn't even know if he had girlfriends. And he called me the one day and said, you would love her because she's like you. What a thing to say, to go from October to now. It's a big difference. One of the things I'm not saying is that I didn't writhe and complain of the injustices I was suffering or mumble and groan, because those of you close to me know, oh, I mumble and groan. I let you know. I'm very articulate, as you can tell. What I'm not saying is that I was happy for each situation. Actually, that's further from the truth. If I could go back and say, God, please, I would rather it not happen, I would do that. That I didn't shed tears or question God, or even sometimes I screamed at God. Driving to the hospital, that first phone call in October, I yelled. I was hysterical. I will tell you, I'm not going to lie. I was hysterical. And the other thing I'm not going to say is that God caused these trials or these situations, because he did not. But in all of these things, and any of these deep, dark things, I want you to know I didn't stay there long. Because once I got myself together, I turned to the one who can make a difference, and he has the desires in my heart, and that's God. So that's what we're talking about today, is these injustices. And I wanted to start because I know a lot of you in this room, and I know a lot of the things you experience. I know people that are watching today and the things they're going through. We all go through stuff. You look at people and you think, gosh, their life is perfect. Really, it's not. Everybody goes through something. Jesus followers, we are put through trials to make us into who God wants us to be. It's not a punishment. So let's take some time and look at the Bible and what it can teach us about thankfulness in the tough times. I loved this as I read, and this was part of my problem in Dana Laughs. I just kept reading more, and I'm like, this is good stuff. There's so much good stuff. I could talk about the lepers, and I could talk about this, and I could talk about that. But I landed in James, James 1, 2 through 4. And in James 1, it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So I know it's when we're going through these times that our faith is being revealed. I know personally when I've experienced various difficult seasons in my life, it's revealed what my faith is made out of, and it's also revealed what I need to work on. Not everything is perfect. If we go further in James 5 through 6, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. I don't know about you, but that gives me so much comfort to read just that part of it. Because let's be real, I know often when I'm going through these things and things get hard, I stumble around and all I want is answers and solutions and healing and relief from emotional struggle and relief from pain. So I'm just searching for answers. When we do that, often is when we go to those places we should not go. We self-medicate. We get depressed. We do all these things we shouldn't do. So I've learned, instead of running from a trial, I need to pray to God for the endurance I need to grow stronger in that season. Just like we train to run a marathon or anything else that takes time to prepare for or accomplish, we grow stronger. If I went right now and said I was going to run a 5K, I would get not far at all. But in the time of preparing, it makes me able to handle each thing. And it's hard work, and you want to quit and tap out at times. Trust me, there's many times that I've wanted to tap out and I'm done. But if we keep our eye on Jesus, we will always finish the race, because he did. And as I was writing this, I kept thinking everything just kept bringing me to the cross. Our ultimate goal is Jesus to finish the race that God has for us. And my race looks different than your race. But we all have a race, or we all have a chapter. We talk a lot about, with the children downstairs, that our lives are like a chapter in a book. And God knows the beginning and the end. We as humans, we want to know the middle. But we don't. God reveals what he reveals each little bit at a time. So it's in the trials or painful times God is able to grow something in us that only could be cultivated in that environment. It's in these times that God and the Holy Spirit have the opportunities to say what needs to be said, teach us what we need to be learned, sometimes knock the chip off of our shoulder when it needs to be, and to teach us about forgiveness and help us become who God intended us to be. When I was thinking about this, I think back to these trials that we just went through with Brandon. You initially go to a place where you think, what did I do? I was a bad parent. What did I forget? What did I not teach him? What did I? One day, Josh and I were coming to church, believe it or not, getting ready for church, and our printer just up and stopped working. I now can look back and see where God probably made the printer stop working, because when we went to the library to print what we needed to print, walking in the path to the library were all these signs on statistics of suicide. And of course, the cynical me and the smart me, like, great, like I need to be seeing this right now. Signs about suicide. Well, inside, there we're holding a conference for survivors of suicide. Now, after I did a Kacy, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, I learned it wasn't for the people who had tried it and lived. It was for their families, for the people who did not. So as I walked in the door, I saw on the sign where the conference was the person that was holding it. So like God does in me, like writing this again and things like that, he wouldn't stop. I don't know if you ever get that nagging of it won't go away, so you know it's something else telling you. So I went in and made the copies I needed to make, and God was nagging me, go find that person. Go find that person. So one of the pieces I left out in this is Josh, as we were dealing with Brandon and his suicide attempt, Josh took it really hard. Josh was very hurt by it, hurt that his brother would think to leave us, and he was very hurt that he would consider the aftermath if he had been successful. So Josh had a lot of anger toward his brother toward this. So I went to find this lady who was running this conference for people, survivors of suicide. And I met her. I went around and asked everybody where she was, where she was. She was there. Come to find out, she was a teacher at Mount Hebron High School, where Joshua goes to school. She was a math teacher. I went up to talk to her, and she was the first person since the attempt that I could walk up to and say, I feel like a head walking around with no body. And she is the one person that God put in front of me that had the authority to say, stop it. This had nothing to do with you. It's not something you did. It's not something you didn't do. When he was trying to commit suicide, he wasn't even thinking about you. The only person he was thinking about at that moment was himself. People could say that to you walking around. People could say, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, or whatever. This lady, come to find out, her daughter committed suicide. She was a first-year college student. She was completely happy, they thought. She came home for a break, and one night she committed suicide. They had no idea, no reason. They had no explanation why. So this lady divulged her life into people and families who have had people commit suicide. So God put this lady, because the printer didn't work, and to stand in front of me and say, stop. It had nothing to do with you. So in that moment, God used an opportunity to teach me that had nothing to do with me. It also taught me that when you need to seek out people for help. God will put people in your life, but we oftentimes keep it to ourselves and we don't want to share. This is a private thing in our family. You don't want to go around and broadcast, my son attempted suicide. In doing that, though, there are so many other people that I've met in the last year that their children have too. It's something we share. It's something that I can tell them how I feel, and they can tell me how they feel. God has used this to cultivate me into a person he needs me to be. I've told it all space where I was going to be. So in our trials and painful times, God grows something in us that can be cultivated only as time. So when facing these trials, I came up with 3 things that I have learned to remember as I go through things. Because I know I've gone through trials my whole life, and I know trials are still coming. So I was thinking of, what do I need to know to keep going? What can I teach you so when you're in that trial, you can keep going? So the first one I had is, the trial is testing my faith, and testing my faith is good. This test is for our sake. God doesn't allow these tests to oppose me or defy me, but he uses them to define me. And when I thought about this, I thought of like King David, and we hear the story. Who did he defeat? The giant. When you think of Moses and Pharaoh, these are times when these people were in situations that seemed impossible, but they weren't. And we're still talking about them today. Now, I don't want to be like the Bible's written. I'm not going to be that person that people are going to talk about forever. But when I show the joy in these situations, hopefully I'm showing people another side. The second thing I want to remember is, I will persevere in this trial, and it's going to make me stronger. Often when people face trials or obstacles, they feel like God is mad at them or punishing them or causing that trial. And that could not be further from the truth. God does show up, however, in these things, because he wants the world to see that he's stronger than all things we can possibly face. In a world right now where things are getting tough, God is still alive and present, but so is Satan. Satan is a growing entity. His job is to steal our joy. So we, as Christians, need to choose joy and be a reflection of that to the world around us. The reason I'm reminded of this, and I will never, ever forget it, is God sent his son to overcome the biggest trials that could ever, ever, ever be overcome, was sin and death. Because of that sin and death, we get the gift of eternity. And because of that, so I can face these trials. Number 3, the future me is going to look back and be thankful for this trial. In it, you would be cynical and say, yeah, there's no way. But in future trials, it's going to teach me to be less likely to run, to blame, complain, or self-medicate, like I was talking about a few minutes ago. Because I'm going to look back and I'm going to know God used these things to turn me into who I am today. I am by no means perfect, y'all. Just let me tell you that right there. I am by no means perfect. But I know who can teach me through these things. Instead, I'm going to turn to the Lord, who guides me and makes my path straight. It tells us that in the Bible. He is our light. He is the way to go. So those are the 3 things I wanted to share with you. Lots of our trials are things we didn't choose or have control over. The one thing we do get to choose, though, is how we respond to these tests when we get them. we need to learn thankfulness in all situations. The really cool thing again is, like I said, I've been reading the Bible. I was telling Pastor Tamara I could write so many different things because there's so many cool stories in the Bible. But these are the passages that stuck out in my head that I turn to every time I'm facing something. It's making me emotional. Sorry. Thankfulness guards our heart. It tells us that in Philippians 4:4-7. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God will transcend all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Jesus Christ." Isn't that amazing? It gives me such peace. Just read that. People talk about getting tattoos. I can't, obviously, never get a tattoo. That's what I get on me because it just tells you everything you need to know. The next one is thankfulness aligns our soul. In 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18, it says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ." When people talk about praying, they're like, "Do you have a devoted prayer time?" I don't have a devoted prayer time because I'm pretty much praying constantly. And everything I do, if you ever drive by me in a car and you see my mouth moving, you'll think I'm talking to somebody. No, I'm talking to somebody. I'm talking to God. And I just pray all the time. I'm a constant prayer. If you've seen my posts on Facebook right now, we have a friend who is dealing with a horrendous trial right now that is so hard to imagine having my own 18-year-old. His daughter is in the hospital fighting for her life right now over a simple cold that turned into viral pneumonia. She's a beautiful 18-year-old girl, and it's just caused one thing after the next. But the thing that we have that a lot of people in our world don't have is we have the belief in Jesus, that he is capable. We have seen miracles happen the last few days. It's giving me chills just telling you. We've seen miracles that doctors can't explain. We can. The doctor literally cried in front of them, and when a scan came back clear that they thought was not going to be, they're like, "We don't know how to explain this." The father said, "I do." He's like, "I've got prayer warriors out there praying and speaking specifically to God on this situation. I do know." This beautiful girl is still battling. We don't know what the end's going to be. We don't know what lasting results she'll have from this. But the thing we do know is God is in that room. He's in that hospital. He's being a reflection to the people all around her right now. And they're getting to see a glimpse of Jesus through this. God did not cause this. This is a hurtful world. This is medications that cause things they shouldn't. It's just things that happen. But now the family, instead of running from God, is running straight to his arms and using him to hold them up in this situation. One of the last things that calms my heart in the scripture that I go to a lot, thankfulness understands that God redeems everything in our lives. Even the bad, God will redeem it. He will turn it into good. Brandon, I don't know how that's going to turn out. I can tell you when he was in the hospital for 2 weeks prior to the attempt. Day one, he went into that hospital and he was everybody's friend. When we think, I will be honest, when Brandon was going through this, he ran from the church. And he tells you now the reason I ran from the church is because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew the decisions I was making was not what God wanted for my life. So the easiest way was to run from the church. When he went into the hospital, he was a reflection of God to the people in the hospital. The first time we went to visit, the doctors and the nurses were like, "Everybody loves your son. He is everybody's friend. Everybody is flocking to your child because he is a reflection to them of something they want." Brandon now sees that. And now he's thinking of, in the future, what could I do? So if you watch his posts, sometimes the language is not what you want it to be as a mother. But anyway, he says things in a way that they're truthful. He's saying it from the heart, y'all. He's saying what it means. He's like, don't let people or relationships affect you. He's saying all those things that he needed to be saying before he tried to do something that could have ended poorly. So when we think of this, thankfulness understands that God redeems. The Lord, in Isaiah 51:3, it says, "The Lord will surely comfort Zion and will look with compassion on all their ruins. He will make her deserts like Eden, her wastelands like gardens, like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the sound of singing." So God can take the wastelands and turn it into something beautiful, to the Garden of Eden. That means that God can take the bad things in our life and turn it into something beautiful. Dana's injury could have strained our marriage and caused major issues. It brought us so much closer together, and it's the weirdest thing, and I'm thankful for it. It's hard to say that, like, him being hurt. I would never wish him to be hurt like that again. Him in pain was the biggest struggle of my heart for him ever. But I'm thankful for where we are now as a husband and a wife. I'm thankful for the gift of loving him like I got to for those times in his healing. My eyes twitching. I told Dave today my eyes twitching. What's that mean? But here's the main thing. So, thankfulness is simply an offering. A hope and a faith put in a promise that is yet to be fulfilled. It's a faith in believing that God's truth, that all situations work together for those who love God and are called to according to his purpose. And that's Romans 8:28. It's persevering through the pain because we trust him and we believe in this promise, like the example given of many who have gone before us. And I would write this down. I recommend you read Hebrews 11. I couldn't share it because it's really, really long. But Hebrews 11, all it is about is all the people and their thankfulness to God. And it talks about everyone. And it just blows your mind of all these things. And it reminded me of all the people that have gone before me and have come through. And God was faithful. It was during those times when the Holy Spirit steps in with a gentle voice that he's reminding me of those who walk beside me and who have gone before me. And it teaches me not to lose heart. I think of Horatio Spafford. Have you guys heard of him? He's a modern-day Job. He wrote, "It is well with my soul," after the death of his daughters and the loss of his entire fortune in the Chicago fires. When you read his story, I read it as I was preparing for this, it blows your mind. He lost his baby son from an illness before all of this. So he had one trial after the next. And he wrote, "It is well with my soul," as he was journeying across the ocean to go meet his wife. They were going on holiday, and his children died as their ship they were on was hit by a crew, like a big tanker ship, and his daughters were lost, but his wife was not. And he was going to meet them, and he was on another ship going across the same ocean, and he wrote, "It is well with my soul." I think of friends whom I've watched succumb to horrible illnesses. I think of the wonderful men, women, and children who are and were bright lights, and who overcame their tragic circumstances because they chose to say, "God, allow me to discover the ways to give thanks to you in all aspects of this unspeakable part of my life, and I want to be a testimony to you, and I want to be a remembrance of you in my faithfulness." I think of the thousands of Christians who right now are suffering because of being a Christian today, that willingly choose to give up their life because of their faith in God. Can you imagine? We live in this country where we can openly express our faith. There are people in other parts of the world right now are dying to do it. Dying to do it. And that's not just a saying. They are dying to express their faith. And mostly, I think of the Lord, the God, the man, who was beaten to a pulp, pinned to a splinter-filled plank of wood, and humiliatingly he was displayed before an entire city. He underwent such physical and emotional torture for no reason other than to say, "My darling daughter or son, this is what I'm willing to endure for you so that you and I can be in a relationship." Does everyone in this room realize that applies to all of us? That applies to you and me, in the good and in the bad. He's there for you. So today, as I reflect on these people and these circumstances, it doesn't change the difficulty of my own situation, but it definitely changes my perceptions of it. And it opens the door to giving thanks with a grateful heart. So today, I wanted to end our service a little differently. And those of you like me, I like different. We're going to pray. And I'm going to start out with a prayer, and I'm going to pause. And we're going to have a moment of silence during that part. And at that pause, I want you individually to be thinking of a difficult situation, a storm you're in, a season you're in, and I want you to talk to God about it. I'm not going to make you stand up. I'm not going to make you say it out loud. I'm not going to make you share. This is between you and God. I know in these times, the only thing that gets me from one thing to the next and through it is these conversations with God. You can say whatever you need to say. If you're angry, if you're hurt, if you're disappointed, if if you're struggling, if you don't know that you can go on, God can handle it all. I promise you. I've been there, and He's brought me through it to where I am today. Not been an easy journey, but I'm here. Dane, I was wondering if you could come up and you could play it as well with my soul while I pray. Could you do that for me? Oh, you're going to play it? Oh, cool. Awesome. All right, so let's get ready to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for today. I thank you for every day. I thank you for every day you give me, specifically an opportunity to be a reflection of you. Father, I pray that I can resound the joy that you want me to resound through the things I've been through. But Lord, teach me to offer you a heart of thanksgiving and a praise in all my daily experiences. Teach me to be joyful always and to pray continually and to give thanks in all my circumstances. I accept them as your will for my life. I long to bring pleasure to your heart daily, break the power of the enemy in my life, defeat him through my sacrifices of praise. God, change my outlook and my attitude into one of a joyful contentment with my present circumstances. Lord, I thank you for